So let's go over the photo editing options a little bit in more detail. So I have this photo of this young girl, and we're going to go to the filter panel and play around with some options. So every time I open the filter panel, I just go straight away to advanced options and start to kind of mess around. So with this one, I wonder if a black and white would do really well. All you have to do is bring the saturation all the way down, and you have an instant black and white photo. And a lot of times I'll increase the contrast to kind of bring out more of the shadows and highlights. That's what contrast does. And you can actually reduce or increase the brightness. That can always help as well. And a lot of these are available to you in a Photoshop program. These are really basic tools. If you wanted to do more extensive editing, I would suggest a Photoshop or another online tool, but this, you could still do a lot with a combination of these sliders. So I like to have it a little bit sharper, so I just reduce the blur a little bit. And vignette, increase. There's not a dramatic effect with vignette, so I usually increase it if I want to have a little bit of the dark edges, but it doesn't seem to do a whole lot in Canva. So I'm just kind of adjusting, trying to find the right fit. Maybe adding some saturation, maybe just a little muted. Can mess around with tint a little bit, but I think I want to keep it just black and white. So there's that photo in black and white. Let me mess around a little bit more. They have preset settings as well, but I think I kind of like, ooh, that has a nice glow to it. And anytime you like a particular filter, go down to advanced options and you can see the combination of filter effects that created that filter. So you can find out kind of what made this happen. So you can create it on your own. Let's go back to black and white. Reduce saturation, increase contrast, maybe increase the brightness, and there you go. So cropping photography. We're back to this ad that we were creating before, and we have our nice headline, and we're going to go ahead and add a photo. So we're just going to go to Elements, or actually, I'm sorry, Uploads, and we're going to find the photo that I picked out for this beauty ad for a hair care product company. I'm going to go ahead and drag this photo in, and we're going to learn a little bit about proper cropping, zooming, and kind of figure out what works really well. So I'm going to go ahead and arrange, and I'm sending this photo all the way to the back so you can see the headline. So you have a lot of different options here. You can actually have a really nice, kind of bring our type down here. You can actually have a nice clean headline here, just like that. You can actually have the text overlay the photo. And go ahead and move that over here. So this has a really nice border to it, lots of nice white space. I'm going to go ahead and zoom out so you can see. So this has a potential to be a really nice clean layout. We can also integrate the typography over the photo and zoom in on this a little bit more. So I'm just going to take my photo and I'm just going to get my little icon and drag it. Make it a little bit bigger. I can actually have this go the entire ad and make sure it's all the way in the back. I believe it is. And so right now the headline is kind of really fighting for some attention. So we really want that headline to pop out a little more. We can use color to make it pop out. Let me just kind of do some, like a nice blue I kind of picked out ahead of time. And let's make, as I've said in previous videos, it's really nice to have a contrast. So I like to do a contrast with color in my headline. So I did a blue and a white. And so I feel like this photo can be screened back and edited a little bit. So let's kind of see, let's actually make all this white, see how that works. So we're going to mess around with some photo options. We're going to go ahead and highlight our photo and go to filter, and there's a ton of options. So let's kind of see. I feel like I want to make this single toned, and one way to do that is to reduce the saturation. So I'm reducing the saturation. It already looks beautiful. Look at that blue-green color, kind of really pops out now that we made that black and white. That looks excellent. Let's take it a step further and let's actually add a tint to it, or a tone. I'm going to move this to the right or left. It's actually going to change it depending on the color it's on. And we can also change the intensity. So this might be a little too intense, kind of like a purple. And let's bring up the saturation a little bit. We can kind of play around with that. Almost looks like an Instagram filter, and a little bit with that purple hue to it. You can add contrast to really bring out the shadows and the highlights of the woman. If you actually reduce the contrast, you'll actually start to blend in a little bit, which is exactly the look I'm going for. So reducing the contrast was a good thing. I actually want to screen it back. I'm going to actually make it a little less bright because I really want my white type to show up. So X process, that's going to bring out your blacks. If you reduce it, it's actually going to blur some of those blacks. So just play around, slide this around. We definitely don't want it blurry. What I really like to do with photography is I love to just actually go negative on the blur and sharpen it a little bit. I love sharp photos. So I'm going to sharpen it, not too much because it gets a little too grainy, maybe right about here. So I'm really liking that right now. Let me just mess around with the brightness a little bit more right there. And vignette is going to add a little bit of black around the edges. It kind of adds a nice little effect. That's definitely kind of the direction I was wanting to go with this. So I wanted to show you guys how you can add texture in Canva. This is the poster that we designed in the last module, and I'm going to show you how to add this cool paper texture. So I went ahead and I went online and I found a paper texture I think was high resolution enough. And I'm going to go ahead and drag it in and do some photo filter options on it to kind of have that textured effect applied to the whole poster. So here is my texture. I'm going to actually turn this a little bit and stretch it across the whole poster. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here to the transparency and I'm going to reduce it. I may end up changing this a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and reduce it till I think it's at a point where I really like it. So let's go ahead and go to filter, and let's kind of go to the advanced options and play around to see what we think looks the best. I think I'm going to go right to contrast. I'm actually going to decrease contrast to bring out more of the wrinkles. I think it's going to be, the sweet spot's probably right there. I don't think that's going to do too much because it's already a gray piece of paper. And we want to actually sharpen it a lot. Right about there. Let's go ahead and leave that at 0. And let's do a little bit of a vignette to kind of add the shadow on the corners. Let's play around with brightness just a little bit. And I think we're at a point where I think the texture's been applied. So I'm actually going to reduce the transparency just a little. I can increase it to kind of get a more dramatic effect and decrease it. So you can see just kind of a subtle paper texture. And let me just mess around with contrast a little bit more. Right there. And there you have it. That's how you can apply textures over solid colors and type.